this is Vivica from the Nourished Caveman and the Healing Foods Method. And today I'm here to talk to you about adrenal burnout or adrenal crash or adrenal fatigue. There are many names for pretty much the same situation and different degrees of the same situation. So I hope this is going to be a valuable topic for you. I know a lot of women these days are experiencing adrenal stress at some level, and they're not able to identify it in their lives as it shows up in different ways with different symptoms, but we're not always aware of where does it come from, how does it manifest, and what are we going to do to help it. So for those of you who don't know me, I just want to quickly introduce myself. Hi Tammy, thank you for watching. I am a nutritionist, a keto nutritionist, using the therapeutic ketogenic diet and I specialize in female hormone rebalancing. And that means, yes, adrenal hormones, thyroid, and sex hormones. So this is very much within my field of expertise, but it is also something that I had never experienced before. Maybe at certain level I did, we all do at certain level with this modern day and age and the demands of our modern lives. But I had never experienced before a total adrenal crash, a burnout. And this is what it's happened to me about 3 weeks ago. I realized that my adrenals were just tanking. So it's really brought this topic to relevance as I am healing myself and starting my healing journey. This is the way that I get really deep with a condition and get the most insights when I have to face it for myself in my own body. Then I'm so much more able to address the concerns when it comes to my patients, my audience, and the people that come to me for help. So I will also say, I know there are many of you here watching. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm trying to bring you the most value and the most knowledge so that you can have some valuable tools to help yourself in your journey to health within a ketogenic diet or not. I try not to be dogmatic. I use the ketogenic diet, but it's not the only tool in my tool belt by far. So it's just one part of the equation. Also, feel free to say hi and introduce yourselves, and please ask questions. This is a Q&A. It's all about your feedback, your questions, and me being able to address them so that I can bring value to what you are experiencing or what you are struggling with. So we have a lot to cover today. We're gonna jump in, and I have a few pages here, so I made some notes for myself. Let's get in here. So first of all, what are the adrenals? Have you ever asked yourself? Adrenals are two little glands, quite inconspicuous. They sit on top of your kidneys, and their main function is to regulate stress. Adrenals are really 3 glands in one, as there are 3 different parts to this little bean of an adrenal gland. One is the cortex. There is 2 parts of the cortex, and then the medulla, which is kind of the inside. And they produce a number of different hormones. We just think sometimes adrenals equal cortisol, adrenal equal adrenaline, but no, there is a lot more. Adrenals produce some of the sex hormones. They produce DHEA. They produce, of course, cortisol, and also all the corticoids hormones and pregnenolone, as well as DHEA, as I just mentioned. So as you can see, they have a bigger job than we might realize at times. So what does it mean? So they help us to deal with stress. And stress, what is stress? Stress is mainly an adaptation when we need to adapt to circumstances. So when we think about stress, we think about the job, the commute, the task, the to-do list. But in reality, it's helpful to expand your view of stress to anything that your body needs to adapt to. Any new circumstances, any invaders that might come into the body, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about candida in a little bit and how it relates to adrenal fatigue. It could be parasites. Those are all stressors. And here I made a kind of a nice list. That stress is anything that threatens our survival from a biological point of view. So it's not just psychological by far, but is, I would say, mostly physiological. That's the part we don't even realize. So anything that threatens our security, our livelihood, our feeling of well-being, our joy, our happiness, our families, imagine that. And also our stability. So that's where the emotional stress also comes in, because anything that makes us feel unstable is a stressor. So as you can see, there are so many things that we can qualify as stressors in our modern world. I'm not saying that the hunter-gatherers had it so much better than us. They had other problems, but you know, the studies of hunter-gatherer populations actually discovered that the average hunter-gatherer life, it was quite stress-free, aside from running from a predator occasionally, and being in danger, you know, of like an accident or, you know, that kind of violent death. Otherwise, most of the day was spent eating, gathering some food, mostly the women, and then laying around and sitting around and socializing in person, without a phone, without a car, without traffic, without a job. So you can see it was a very different lifestyle that was much more in tune with nature. And I'm telling you all this because we forget sometimes that we have evolved in this kind of lifestyle, and our modern life as we know it is only maybe literally 100 years old, since I think the advent of industrialization and the engine, that things have so dramatically changed. And then in the last 20 years, technology has come on the scene. So there was one layer of industrialization, and then the next layer was technology, and everything has become more complex, accelerated faster, you know, more pressure on our schedules and more to do. And with social media especially, we see so much pressure, so much comparison happens every day, all day, to what we see out there that we need to compare ourselves to. Now, let me ask you at this point, as I don't see any questions yet, have you experienced stress from any of the circumstances in your life? What are some of the stressors that are most relevant for you? Is social media a stressor? Is having to run around all day in the car in traffic trying to catch up with the chores or the kids' activities and the job and the family, the relationship? What are the stressors that you're facing? Please feel free to chime in and post some of them. And so if you want, we can address some of them in the conversation. So I want to now jump, while you think about that, I want to jump to causes of adrenal fatigue. So of course we mentioned stress, but let's get deeper. Let's see, why does a person, especially a woman, get to the point of having adrenal fatigue? So there are 2 points here that I want to mention. They're very important. They're part of the interrelation of all our hormones. Sorry, there is hair in my face as usual. Somebody commented, you have constantly pulling your hair out of your face. Well, tell my hair to not come in my face, please. So sometimes in modern functional medicine or functional endocrinology, what we talk about more than adrenal fatigue, we talk about HPA axis dysregulation. What's that big word? What does it mean? If you hear your doctor saying HPA axis dysregulation, what does it mean? It means hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis dysregulation. So malfunctioning of the connection between these 3 endocrine centers. The brain starts the signaling from the hypothalamus to the pituitary, and then it goes down to the adrenals and loops back to your brain. So there is a constant feedback loop that happens in your body in order to understand what is really going on. So what kind of hormones need to be produced? That is what your brain is signaling to your body. The dysregulation happens. Hey Cindy, yes, I'm glad you're here too. Feel free to ask questions, and maybe at the end of the video we can jump into some of your specific topics, okay? So that feedback loop gets dysregulated when the signals are mixed signals, and also when there is interference from other hormonal loops that happen from the brain to the different organs, like ovaries or thyroid. And this is very, very important for a woman. And if just I can communicate one point for me today, this is probably like one of the core nuggets of knowledge that I want to leave with you. Understanding how your adrenals, your ovaries, and your thyroid, and your brain, of course, all work together to maintain that hormonal balance. They all interact, they all talk to each other, and they all balance and off balance each other's system. So that's why handling hormones, female hormones, is not always easy and straightforward, because there are so many players in this game. It's kind of like a soccer game. You got all these different players playing different roles and all talking to each other and interacting. I'm Italian. I don't do football, I do soccer. So probably football the same here in the States. So first of all, we need to be mindful of the relationship between the adrenals and the thyroid, and how in functional endocrinology, we talk about how they are proportionally inverse. English is really not happening today, huh? So when the adrenals are low, thyroid is high, and when thyroid is high, adrenals are low. And the same thing happens with the progesterone and estrogen balance, which is also extremely important in your female hormone balance, as when progesterone and estrogen, yes, same thing, high and low, adrenals low and estrogen high, and vice versa. And this happens especially with estrogen, but progesterone has a direct relationship to cortisol and adrenal function, as it is adrenal supportive. If you want to know more about these two specific topics, we'll talk about them in the next 2 weeks of live videos. So next week we'll talk about estrogen dominance, estrogen, and adrenal function, and the week after we'll talk about thyroid and adrenal function. So keep following me, keep watching these videos. I'm trying to paint a whole picture here for you. Also, one of my main goals is for you to be empowered and informed whenever you go to your doctor, and whenever you're having symptoms, like we'll go into the symptoms in a second. I want you to know what's happening, so that your doctor is not just trying to slap some medication on you and send you home and get you out of his face. This is for you to understand what's happening in your body, so you can make informed decisions and try to heal and rebalance in the best possible way. And we'll talk about that in a little bit towards the end of the video. So, causes of adrenal exhaustion. We talked about imbalances in the other hormones. One very important one is methylation. And this is kind of a new discovery for functional endocrinology, because not until recently there has really been a focus on the mutations of the liver and the inability to methylate. So probably you have heard about the MTHFR mutation, which of course I have, being Italian, that's very common. And this inability to methylate will directly influence your cortisol production and be a stressor for the adrenals in the long term. So those of you who have an MTHFR mutation, look out, because you're going to have to be more mindful of your adrenals. Another very interesting tidbit is the correlation between your methylation and the production of melatonin, because as you have that mutation and your liver, or you're lacking the nutrients for methylation, so everything that is needed for that process, that it's kind of another conversation, but lacking nutrients can influence your melatonin production, which will imbalance or affect your sleep rhythms, which is a very big stressor for the adrenals. Sorry, live video, I'm taking a sip here so I can continue speaking. Another big stressor for your body and cause for adrenal fatigue is biochemical changes. So whenever your hormones are changing, you're entering perimenopause or you're entering menopause, those are hormonal stressors. The adrenals are directly affected, and also adrenals are going to take over a lot of the hormonal production once you step into menopause. So it is of vital importance to be prepared and supportive if you don't want to have a pretty rough transition into menopause and become very symptomatic. Another very interesting point, candida. Chronic candida, especially driven by sugar or high carb consumption, can affect the epithelial lining of your intestine and eventually penetrate that lining, get into circulation, and stimulate the interleukin-6 protein signaling that will signal to inflammation and cause a rising of cortisol. So when this happens ongoing, and those of you who have had candida before or systemic candida and you never correlated that to your adrenal stress or a possible crash, or even a crash might happen in the future. So that is an interesting correlation that we need to be aware of, because if you are dealing with some sort of intestinal issues, including candida, but not the only one, you can be sure that your adrenals will be affected. So prevention is better than fixing later, and being able to prevent a crash is probably the right thing to do. And we'll talk about in a minute how to do that and how to address adrenal fatigue and how to heal it. So stay tuned. Bear with me through the heavier, maybe more physiological part that I don't know is fun. The last point that I wanted to mention as a cause of adrenal fatigue is being programmed in utero. And I talked about it in my stories on Instagram last week about a study, several studies being done on the kind of programming, the kind of neurological changes that happen in the fetus when the mother has a very stressful pregnancy. It literally changes the way you perceive stressors, setting you up for a life of being extremely sensitive to any stressor, more sensitive to fear and anxiety, and just being the kind of person that really needs to be mindful of mindfulness. Kind of funny, but yes, being mindful of those triggers and those sensitivities, because that's something that's neurologically imprinted into your brain. So you might be the person that needs constant care, like yoga, meditation, and practices to keep your stress at bay, because you are very susceptible to stress. Okay, I have a nice little sheet here for you before we go into the treatment of adrenal fatigue. So I'm going to show you a little adrenal do's and don'ts. And you can do a screenshot if you're watching, or you can take a picture of the video later. I'm going to read them to you and go over them quickly so that we can talk about them. So adrenal don'ts, let's talk about those first. Junk food, of course. It says junk food is an oxymoron because junk is not food. So there. Caffeine, alcohol, and fruit juice. Fruit juice as being, pretty much pure sugar. So caffeine, alcohol, and sugar. And I would add to that sugar, because it imbalances the glucose in your blood, in your body, in your bloodstream, and adrenals are a big part of glucose regulation. So big stressor. Well, it says sugar says its own little chapter here. Skipping meals. Everybody talk about why we should not do OMAD when we have adrenal fatigue. Same thing, because it's imbalancing your sugar metabolism. Even when you're in ketosis, your adrenals can be taxed by you doing OMAD. Cutting sleep, going to bed late and wake up with alarm clocks, so startling into awakeness. a toxic environment or toxic people, a work or relationship you hate, and excessive exercise. And I talked extensively about the last few points in other videos, so please refer to my video on YouTube about adrenal fatigue. I've done that before, and we talked about exercise for women over 40 when your adrenals definitely need extra support. So you can refer to that video. It's also here on Facebook in the section of the videos, and it's on YouTube on my channel. So what are the do's, adrenal do's? Eat whole healthy food, of course, keto paleo, that's what I call whole healthy food. Drink water, herbal tea. Here it says vegetable juices, I crossed it out. In my book, that is a stressor as well. It's still just as sugar as fruit juices, if it's just pure sugar. Eat fat, not oils, and protein. And you guys, because you are keto paleo, you already know, or you are keto women, you already know everything about how to eat well. We eat keto, and that's very supportive of your adrenals, except for intermittent fasting. So when you do have adrenal fatigue, no intermittent fasting. It's better to eat 3 meals a day. Here it says, eat frequent meals. We don't need to eat as many meals like every 2 hours, like sugar burners, but 3 meals a day with protein and fat is definitely supportive to your adrenals. Be in a clean environment. The toxin conversation, it's a long one, so we'll leave it at that. Enjoy comedies, happy movies, hobbies. Anything that is making you happy is something that's healing for your adrenals. Hi Janet, thank you for watching. Pace your exercise. Definitely do not over exercise, especially cardio. I feel like anaerobic weightlifting resistance exercise is more beneficial, and it does bring benefits. So what is a treatment plan from the perspective of a practitioner? If you went to a functional practitioner that knew what they were doing, what would they tell you for a treatment plan? There are pretty much 3 phases, but 2 parts. One part is to remove the impediments to proper function, and the second part is to support the body physiology and healing process, healing efforts. And in a nutshell, what does that mean? So the first one is facilitate the function of your glands. Remove the nutritional deficiencies, so eat well, supplement well, nourish your body. Removal of stressors, stress relieving practices, and elimination of added stressors. We talked about it in the first part of the video a little bit. Removal of chemical, emotional, and hormonal stressors. So we already talked about that. Removal of toxins, very important. And rest and sleep. So those are all things that are going to help the function of your adrenals. Now, to support the body's physiology and healing process, of course, targeted nutrients that nourish that specific gland or organ. So glandular extracts, we'll talk about it in a second. Sometimes here it mentions hormone replacement. I am not for hormone replacement unless the case is really extreme and your symptoms are also extreme. Usually there are ways around that. Even for menopausal women, perimenopausal women, when things get really difficult, if you are doing everything else right, you should be able to avoid hormone replacement and let the body heal on its own. Adaptogenic herbs, so herbs to help the body adapt to stress. And then iodine, which supports the whole hormonal balance starting from the thyroid. Now, let's look at the 3 steps quickly. 3 steps of adrenal healing. The first step, we call it a crutch, because you really want to intervene in cases like I was a couple of weeks ago, like literally flat on my back and not able to get up and not able to get anything done. I could not believe that I got to that, because I hear that from my patients a lot. And you would think I know better, right? I know how to not get myself there. But guess what? Life happens, and I did. And so I can only take that as a healing, learning process for me. The healing is my learning, so that I can then learn best how to help the people that come to me. So the crutch is the first step. So supplementing sometimes with glandulars, full adrenal gland, desiccated adrenal. And sometimes here it mentions bioidentical hormones when the case is really, really serious. Then we can also use licorice in the case of a full adrenal crash, because licorice supports the production of cortisol by impeding the reabsorbing of cortisol. So we stretch the cortisol we have way longer when we do licorice. So licorice tea in the morning will be a great little thing to do when you have adrenal fatigue. The second step is to facilitate healing, and this is where our adaptogenic herbs come in, like ashwagandha, rehmannia, rhodiola, schizandra. Those are all fantastic herbs. I use them case by case depending on what is needed by the individual patient. This third step is to rebuild the function. This is where the nutrition comes in, and using all those good amino acids, proteins, amino acids, and specific nutrients that your adrenals will need. Like one big one is vitamin C. Your adrenals will never be able to function without proper vitamin C. Coenzyme Q10, that's another great one to support adrenal function. Choline, that's another one that's really important. So we want to have good sources of food, and coming from whole foods, real foods, or whole food supplementation. I use whole food supplements. Sorry, somebody's messaging here. I just use whole food supplements, which help in those steps of like restoring function, nourishing the body, supporting the adrenals, all those three steps. And it's really beautiful to see when you do this in the right way, how the patient reacts and immediately responds to treatment. And the first thing that happens is like your energy starts coming back, you start feeling better, and then eventually the other hormonal system come online too. As you work on one hormonal system, let's not forget that we need to look at everything. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to look at thyroid and adrenals, and we're going to look at progesterone and estrogen and adrenals. I think that was it for today. This is all from my notes. I hope this information was valuable to you. This would be a great time for you to ask questions. Hi, Renee. I see you made it. So nice to see you here. I know that there are some of you watching, so please don't be shy. You can ask questions. Cindy, if you're still here and you want me to address any of your concerns on the video live, I'll be happy to do so. Otherwise, I am going to post this video here on Facebook, or it will be on YouTube as well. And please continue following this conversation if you are interested in this topic of adrenal fatigue. This is one of my specializations in the practice, so I'm constantly bringing it up, sharing this information to bring awareness on the fact itself and what it might look like, and how to address it, how to best resolve it from a holistic perspective. Yes, Cindy's been waking up every morning around 2 or 3 in the morning with a racing heart. So Cindy, I definitely think that it can be adrenal is one of the components, the other one, estrogen. And yes, this can be, and it can be related to blood sugar regulation. It can be related to liver. But for me, the most plausible scenario, because of your case history and because of your age, is that your hormones are shifting and they're not receiving the correct support. How long has this been going on for you? Can you tell me? Is this just happening, or has this been happening for a while? Because I have seen this symptom before. You don't have hot flashes or mood swings, just this one. It could also be a specific nutrient deficiency, but it's really hard to say from one symptom. 5 months, wow. My intuition says it's hormonal, meaning it's due to adrenal, cortisol, and estrogen balance. This is why my intuition is saying, even though Cindy was my patient, we did the program together. This was 2 years ago. So a lot of things can change in 2 years. Extreme hair loss. So you see, hair loss mostly would be either something due to your diet or to your thyroid. I suspect that your thyroid needs support. You're entering into menopausal phase, so that the hormone, like dropping levels of hormone, are causing the symptoms affecting the thyroid. And now, because these problems have not been addressed directly, they're all compounding together and coming to the surface. And of course, because you have not properly supported your adrenals. Have you been through a lot of stress recently? Do you feel like it's been a stressful period of your life? Because sometimes things are manageable until they go suddenly tip and down the slippery slope they go. There was another question here. I hope I answered your question enough, Cindy. But yeah, this would be probably a more private, longer conversation, knowing better what exactly is going on. My answer for now is I think it's the balance of thyroid with hormones, female hormones, and the adrenals. All three of them, they're all out of balance together. Can anyone take CoQ10? I would say, Tammy, yes, if it is a whole food based one, not a synthetic one made in the lab, because the body absorbs the whole food supplements in a whole different way. And Cindy says, huge stressful event in February. Yeah, that makes sense. So it takes a minute, but I think that adrenal event, because I would call that an adrenal event, as kind of started a domino effect that pushed down the first tile, and now has started this chain reaction that has involved your female hormones, which were already in change, and your thyroid finally is affecting your thyroid. So it would be something that needs to be addressed with all different parts in consideration, not just looking at the adrenals or the thyroid, because they're super closely connected. I hope that makes sense, Cindy. Yeah, well, yeah, you know a lot. I know that you did, because I taught you, so you know a lot about these correlations, and we probably talked about it a lot. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for being here with me today. I don't want to make this video too long. If you have any questions, thank you, Cindy, and thank you for coming to the video. But please continue to ask your questions. If you watched the replay of this video, you can email questions at vivica@thenourishedcaveman.com. And you too, Cindy, have a great night. You can follow my Instagram, The Nourished Caveman. You can follow me on YouTube, and of course here on Facebook. Please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe and get notifications, because I'm doing this every week, so you can come in, or actually you can just post questions under the video, and I will be able to answer all your questions. I see Kathleen just joined us. Last minute. Hello, we're almost in closing here, but thank you so much. And please do share this information if you know of anybody, big giant moth, if you know anybody that could benefit from this information, please feel free to share. And if you do need more support, I work with patients one-on-one. I don't do groups anymore. I have narrowed down the scope of my practice to one-on-one work for people, for women that want to go deep and resolve their health concerns and resolve their hormonal issues. And they want the support and the help of a practitioner who's not going to treat them just like a number, but who really is committed and dedicated to doing the work together step by step. So again, if you're interested, reach out to me, Vivica at thenourishedcaveman.com, or go through the inquiry form on my blog, The Nourished Caveman. You can look under the Healing Foods Method. That is my program. I do also do individual consults when appropriate. All right, have a wonderful night. Weekend is almost here. Tomorrow is Friday, so happy Thursday night. And see you next week talking about adrenals and hormones.